G'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life. And you might be wondering why on earth I'd want to compare an ancient Nissan Maxima with my modified Honda Accord. And well, to be honest, I am too. But there's two reasons why I want to do this. The first one is because I'd really like to compare my Accord with the Nissan Skyline GT250 or GT350, but unfortunately I haven't been able to find one yet that isn't absolutely awful. So when I found out that this happened to have a VQ under the bonnet when we traded in, I thought, why not, it's close enough. And the second reason is that I don't like Nissan. The only performance ones I've driven is the 350Z and 370Z, and both of them had the worst interior known to man and an engine that sounded like a trumpet. And all the other Nissans I've driven have been sort of from the same era, Tidas, Primeras, Pulsars, and they've all been absolutely woeful. But I drove this expecting more of the same, and was pleasantly surprised. In terms of exterior styling, it's certainly not the best looking car known to man, but because this is the sort of upper spec model, it has a bit of a body kit around the outside, some slightly bigger wheels, a nice looking boot spoiler and everything. My Accord, on the other hand, is quite lovely. But of course, styling is subjective, so I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. Now thankfully this particular Nissan came from before the era where Mr. Ghosn partnered Nissan and Renault, ruining both brands in the process. Now the newer stuff is probably a bit better, and their older stuff, as I'm now discovering, is not bad either. It's very boring and it's very beige in here, but at least it feels well put together. The climate control feels reasonably good. It's got air conditioning, which blows very nice and cold. It's got cruise control, which works fantastically. The back seat room is absolutely excellent. The driving position's pretty good. The visibility is excellent. It's very comfortable, and just in general, it is a okay interior for a 20-year-old car. The Accord's interior, by comparison, is definitely a big step up in terms of build quality and design. It just looks that little bit more nice and interesting, and it also has the advantage of extra features, stuff like dual zone climate control. You can get them with auto lights and auto wipers. It's got a much more comprehensive trip computer and traction control and buttons for your radio and that kind of stuff, just stuff that makes a car nicer to live with every day. The engine under the bonnet of the almighty Maxima is a VQ30DE. It's a 3-litre double cam V6 paired up with a delightful 4-speed automatic transmission. It's pushing out a whopping 157 kilowatt and 280 newton meters of torque, and in comparison with my car, this is a K24A3. It makes 140 kilowatt and 223 newton meters from stock. It's obviously a 2.4 litre inline 4 paired up with either a 5-speed automatic or, in the case of mine, a 6-speed manual. But thanks to the modifications that mine has, it's now pushing 150 wheel kilowatt and 243 wheel newton meters. So the wheel torque these cars put down is probably pretty similar, and the wheel horsepower mine might be just slightly above the Maxima over here. And of course my Accord is also a little bit lighter, but it will be interesting to see what happens in the rolling race nonetheless. 3, 2, 1, go. And 3, 2, 1, go. Driving the Nissan Maxima. I have not heard a Nissan door close with that level of solidity ever. And that's what's astounded me about this car, is that it's old, it's a Nissan, and yet somehow it's actually quite good. The steering is nice and heavy, it's by no means direct, but the car gets around corners no problem at all. It's very smooth. The V6 is extremely refined, and while the transmission is a typical 90s 4-speed slush box, at least it's smooth. And if you just put it in D, the car just drives along very happily. It rides well. If you just want a car to cruise long distance, this is actually, what are you doing? Oh my goodness. Nearly got killed by a bus. This is actually a surprisingly nice car. But the best thing about this is the V6. It sounds amazing. I drove a 350Z and it just sounded like a trumpet. It sounded freaking awful. This somehow sounds absolutely amazing. I've really enjoyed driving this thing, and I shouldn't because it's awful. But with an engine that sounds that good, it just makes this car glorious. It's not that fast, it has a pretty average transmission, it has a pretty average interior, it's very boring, it doesn't especially look particularly interesting, it's not particularly featuresome, it's an absolute lounge suite on wheels through turns, but it has a V6 that sounds like this. So who flipping cares? Because it sounds amazing. Oh yes. But let's be honest, that Maxima was made 10 times better by the amazing V6 engine that sounds just beautiful. A stock K24 is never going to sound anywhere near that good. You have to do quite a few things to it to make a K24 sound that lovely. But thankfully the K24 is bolted inside of a just generally much better car. This has a much nicer interior with nicer gauges, with a more useful tripometer in it. It's got a better stereo system that probably sounds better and has more means of playing audio. It has dual zone climate control rather than single zone climate control. It handles much more nimbly, and yet while it does suffer in the boot space and the back seat room department, the front seat driving position is just infinitely better in this car. It's available with a better transmission, both manual and automatic, because it's a 5-speed, and it just generally operates a lot better. And there is of course one other quite substantial factor that makes this car brilliant, and that is the K24. There's a reason why there's more people modifying K24s than VQ30s, and that's because this thing makes significantly more power than that V6 from an engine significantly smaller. And this is kind of a bit of a meme video as a placeholder while I hopefully get my hands on a Skyline GT250. But I'll leave you with that lovely sound, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next time.